Welcome back to Beyond the Headline, everyone. It's a really exciting and beneficial day to join us because I'm here with the CMO of LiveIntent, Suneet Bhatt. Suneet, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Can we start out with you introducing us to the great work your team is doing?
Sure. So, again, I run marketing at LiveIntent, and recently I took over media sales as well. So, run both the marketing side of the business as well as the revenue generating side of LiveIntent. Quick background, LiveIntent started as a smarter way to buy and sell ads in email. Really simple concept, and it's the principle of anything that you can do with display advertising on the web wasn't possible in email before, and we now made that possible. We also solved some pretty cool things. So that started 5 years ago. When you start seeing all the macro trends in the industry, we keep finding ourselves on the right side of history because of the way we built ourselves up. So, the first thing is, if you think about ad blocking, viewability, fraud, people-based marketing, any of those things, we sort of naturally fix those at LiveIntent. And we did that because we target to the email address. And I think as you've learned and seen over the past few years, the email address has sort of gone from being a place where you receive messages online to a way you identify yourself online, sort of your passport. And so as we move forward, we've just become more and more focused around the email address and moving beyond just sort of advertising into marketing to your known customers as well. In terms of the things that I think we're doing, sort of three key points and problems that we solve. I would say there are, number one, in terms of what we can do for your audience is we are a great way to solve the problem of mobile. Email is 61% mobile. We know more and more people are spending time on mobile devices. And so that cuts both ways. For publishers, they're losing attention to mobile devices and they're trying to figure out ways to monetize that. We can help publishers improve the way they engage their customers and monetize that audience on mobile because that's just naturally what we do with email. I think the second thing is for advertisers who are looking to capture that attention and deliver a message. We do a fantastic job of delivering an audience that is 61% mobile, and we only deliver your messages and advertisements when somebody actually opens an email and downloads images. So it's the most engaged audience on the web. And it's not a small audience. We're now at, I think as of yesterday, we're at 117 million people we reach in the US. And that is, for context, larger than Snapchat, Pandora, Twitter, and AOL in the US. So a pretty big audience. I think the second thing that we can help you do extraordinarily well, so one is sort of mobile. I think the second thing that we can help you do really well is eliminate the principle of sort of acceptable loss. And Jenna, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but email marketing is one of the only places where scoring a 15 out of 100 is actually something that people feel pretty good about. That means that 15% of the people open your emails and 85% of the people don't. What we can help you do, in the past, the only solution to that was, look, these 85% of people didn't open my email. I'm going to send them another email. That's a terrible idea. And so what we say is don't send those 85% of people another email. Instead, be respectful. Find out where they are paying attention. And because we target the email address, and very specifically a hashed email or an anonymized version of the email address, what we allow a lot of our advertisers and publishers to do is say, give us the folks who haven't necessarily opened one of your emails. Give us those anonymized, encrypted email addresses. And when one of those open one of our publishers' emails, we'll come back to you and say, hey, we saw this encrypted address. We know it's valuable to you. And they open the New York Times. Do you want to deliver your ad or your message to that person? And if you say, yeah, this is what I want to do, and this is how much I'm willing to pay, all things being equal, we will serve that ad. And we'll take your email open rate up from 15% to 30, 45% without sending another email. So it's about being respectful to the customer, and it's about capturing that attention that already exists. And email efficiency is sort of what I'd say. But those are probably two of the big things that we do.
I think both of those, Suneet, really lend to people-based marketing, which you've called, the biggest shift in marketing since digital. And people-based marketing makes
Yeah.
sense because, like you just said, if I don't open your email, you're not sending me 2 or 3 more.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's right. Look, people-based marketing, I think, hits a few notes. One, we joke about it internally because, I mean, who the hell else are you advertising to if you're not advertising to people? But the fact that the industry needed to reinforce and differentiate itself by saying, look, now we can guarantee that you're reaching people, I think is interesting. But people-based marketing isn't just about reaching people. It's about reaching people in the context and mindset that they're in respectfully. So if and when they are paying attention, and if and when they have given the permission to communicate with them. There's a great book by Seth Godin that I quote quite a bit, Permission-Based Marketing from sort of 1998 or so. And it's this idea that more and more as the universe moves to consumer first, you have to have the right and the explicit permission to deliver a message to a person. So I think people-based marketing is making that possible, where it's not just about an advertiser delivering a message to a person. It's about a person giving permission to be messaged and marketed to. And to me, that's awesome.
I love how you phrase it, and you shared previously that our email has almost become a passport of our identity. And I think that makes so much sense because when I think of the emails that I get, of course, I mean, you have to subscribe. So I'm opening them because I want to open them. But the random ones that you get subscribed without knowing, I get so angry, unnecessarily angry, that this is coming in. What have you seen work for some of the teams that you're partnering with at LiveIntent to really drive those open rates and excitement?
Sure. So one, I think you hit on a really interesting note, and one of my sales guys usually kicks off his sales presentation by doing a little story back and forth. So the first thing he says is he'll go to the customer or the prospect and say, "Hey, can I borrow your your laptop? I need to look up something on the web." And the person's like, "Sure, no problem." And then he says, "Can you actually log into your email? I need to send my wife an email from your account because I don't have my laptop." And they're like, "No, that's incredibly weird. That's my email. It's very personal." So I think you hit on a nuance that it's your identity. It's super personal to you versus just kind of browsing the web. In terms of sort of what's successful and what's driving open rates, I actually think open rates are falling by the wayside. We don't worry about open rates. So the 117 million people that we reach, we start counting as soon as the email is opened and as soon as the image is downloaded. People used to buy unopened, and I think it's a false metric. We do some coaching and advising on things like deliverability, subject line optimization. We just did a webinar. There are a number of things that we've done sort of on that front, but we actually say, open rates, we're not even worried about that. We worry about post-open and post-image download because that's when you have somebody's attention. And when we start talking about it that way, the number of times folks come to us and say, "Great, you're doing email. What are your open rates?" And we say 100%, because the second all the ads that you buy and all the native advertising you deliver on our platform, we guarantee it's already been opened, because if it hasn't been opened, we don't deliver it. Is that helpful?
Yeah, it's really helpful, and I think it lends to mobile, which I'm excited to chat about because it's a totally different game. And I love in your white paper, you guys say more mobile, more problems, which had me laughing. Tell us about mobile and also what you're excited about in that space.
Sure. I think everybody is excited about the fact that attention is moving to mobile. It gives you so much possibility and potential because it's always on, it's always with you, it's always in your pocket, it's nearby, right? So the ability to deliver the most relevant message. I mean, the standard cliche, right person, right message, right time, right place. Mobile makes that possible. But, in the immortal words of the great philosopher Stan Lee, with great power comes great responsibility. And I think because that's always on and because that's always with you, what mobile has to get right is the idea of permission and creating logged in, opted in environments where you authorize. I talk about it in terms of sort of the social contract, right? And not sort of like Rousseauian in nature, but sort of more modern, where there's an exchange. If I have given the New York Times my email address in return for receiving great content from them, that exchange has happened. I trust them with my email address, and I trust that they will send me things that are relevant to me. It's not just the news. That's also the advertisements that they deliver to me. Those have to be relevant. Mobile makes all of that possible, but it raises the expectations and standards of marketers and advertisers to be that much more thoughtful and that much more respectful. And I think what's really exciting is that that's why mobile adoption hasn't, gone as far as it should, because people have to be really thoughtful about it. People have to be really, concerned and considerate about it, and that takes time. And people haven't had time to practice yet. So I think you'll see it explode, and I think when it's done right, it's going to be a beautiful thing.
I'm really glad you mentioned that when you subscribe to the New York Times, obviously you want to get the news, but you're interested in other things. And it's a question I was really excited to ask you. We always talk about, surprising and delighting our customer. Do we want to be surprised in email? Do we want something different than what we subscribed to?
I feel like you've, like the rest of us, we've all been watching a lot of Silicon Valley on HBO, and we hear these buzzwords and terms thrown out. I'd love to get to a place where an algorithm can delight a user on the other side. I think we're a little far away from that. And I don't know if, to your point, I don't know if customers want to be surprised and delighted. We're at Maslow's hierarchy right now. And right now they just want to be taken care of and respected. And I think once that's there, they'll share more information and you'll get to some point of self-actualization. But you're right. I don't think folks want to be surprised as much as they want to be kind of the opposite of surprised. They want to be respected and they want to say, that's kind of neat. I appreciate that. And if I don't, thank you for making it easy for me to tell you that ad sucked and I never want to see it again.
I love it. For you, what are some emails, Suneet, that you get and you love to open? You think they do an excellent job?
In terms of from specific folks or things I subscribe to?
Anything that is a great example you feel of email marketing today.
Sure. I think, I love our stuff. I think the benefit of being a marketer that markets to marketers is I get to dog food and practice with our stuff. So not being, I'm not, being overly self-promotional, but I'm very proud of the work that our team does, the video series and a number of things. So I think we do a good job. I think when you look at the folks that do it for a living, there are some people that do a really good job. HubSpot is always an exceptional model for how to do content marketing, email marketing, and the things, and they should be. I mean, they have a fantastic product, and I love the people over there that do it. I think, if you look at, folks that are concerned about user experience and are really empathetic to their users, people that do a great job, InVision app is fantastic. I have nothing to do with UX necessarily, but I love reading their emails from their CEO. They're super personal. Clark is incredibly charismatic, and the content in there, I think is really fantastic. I'd say those are some examples of things that I look at and I feel pretty good about. Those would be the ones that I think come to mind right now. I think in terms of if it's content and things I opt into, you've got to love what Vox and the Skim have done for news and information, right? Skim is fantastic, and everybody has that reaction. By the way, Skim is outstanding, and they are both sort of clients of ours in different ways. And when they both signed with us, the excitement here was amazing because these are cutting edge innovators that are making things sound biteable and chunky and easy to digest, mobile format ready, creative and memorable. I think, again, both Vox and the Skim do just outstanding jobs when it comes to news and information. So I think those are probably the ones that I trust the most. And then the basics for me, I think there are two sort of alert services as well, which is, again, the ultimate opt-in. Not only have I opted in and given you my email address, I've told you exactly what I want you to message me about. And one is Google Alerts, sort of tried and true. I get my 5 Google alerts every morning, and I read them all. And then Adam introduced me to TalkWalker, which I think does a great job of scrubbing and giving me updates on key industry terms. So people-based marketing, viewability, things like that. So it depends on the scenario and the format, but I think those are an example of folks who I think do email really thoughtfully and really well. And those are ones that I engage in every day.
Thank you for that. I want to touch on that a little bit more because you were talking about how, you have to be mobile ready. Of course, you have to have great content. You have to have something that, as you were saying before, it has to be the right place and the right time and the right content. And sometimes when you hear that, it's like, oh man, there is a lot to do in this one email. How do you approach it? If you were designing your ultimate email, how would you approach it?
That's a great question. I think you have to leverage the tools you have to make things dynamic. I think the first thing you do is you start, and you are very respectful of letting people know how they got on the list in the first place, and letting people know how they get off the list if and when they want. I think if you do those things right at the very, very beginning and the very, very end, and all the way through, frankly, you're in a good place to test sort of your messaging. After that, it's the ultimate test and learn, right? I can't, there's no secret sauce for it. It is incredibly scientific. You test messages, you test subject lines, you test content, you test sends, you test frequency. But for all that testing, what you have to do is commit yourself to getting smarter every single day about the emails that you send. So, and we have a great team that does that, it's amazing, it's content, but it's amazing how data-driven the content actually is, and how different my program is at LiveIntent than it was at Chartbeat, than it was when I was on the agency side, and have been doing it since, I'm an old man, so a very, very long time. But it's different every time. If you come in with an expectation of what's going to work and you ignore the data, you will fail.
I want to touch on a couple of statistics that I learned reading up on some stuff on LiveIntent that led to that and really stood out to me. So email is 40% more effective than acquisition on Twitter and Facebook. We spend more than 6 hours a day on email. I think that's a message to all of us that we need to get a life and do some other stuff. And then third is an ad in an email is 3 to 5 times more important and not more important, sorry. More effective.
We'll take the more important.
Okay, so more important to acquire and get in touch with your users. When you're going to chat with an audience and introducing them to the importance of reaching out to people on email, what are some of the things you include? Because like you said, it's obvious, but not a lot of us are doing it.
Mm-hmm. It's such to the conversation we had earlier, I think we try and keep it really simple. It's hard to argue with the obvious. And when we talk about email and we talk about what we do in email, we just highlight people's everyday experiences. We'll start with, so you receive newsletters, and Jenna, you talked about this. There's some you sign up for and some you didn't. So you don't open all your newsletters. I mean, how silly is it then for somebody to buy you as an audience based on the emails you're sent versus the emails you open? I mean, it just sounds silly, right? So there's a ton of waste there. You open far fewer emails than you delete, especially in that sort of newsletter format would be my expectation. And so when we say that, people are like, yeah, that makes sense. And then we say, now compare an advertisement on the web versus an advertisement in an email. To see an advertisement on the web, what do you have to do? Open a browser and visit a website. Like, that's kind of all you have to do. To see an ad in an email, what do you have to do? You have to go to the New York Times. You have to sign up for a newsletter. The newsletter has to come to you. Sometimes there's a double opt-in, so you have to confirm that email address is correct. Then you have to get sent the email. Then you have to open it. And then you have to download images. So naturally, it's going to be much more engaged. This is something you've agreed to read and consume, and that's what we're waiting for to even deliver a message to you. Then I talk about some of the other obvious things, which is one of the best pieces of advice I got from my old CEO, Tony Hale at Chartbeat. He's like, Suneet, as great as you think you are, the one thing you will never be able to do is add a 25th hour to the day. attention is our scarcest resource, and that's what we're constantly fighting for. And you can't create attention, but you can find it. And so it's really, really hard to create. It's much easier to find. And so in the context of that email, you have somebody who's engaged, who's paying attention, and then you serve their ad. And all the research shows that, consumption of information after a certain amount of engaged time only goes up, and retention of information only goes up as well. Not only for the content that you're reading, but for the things around you, right? You're just naturally sort of engaged. And so we start having those stories. And then at the end, it's all about performance. So we say, as a result of all the things that I just talked to about and all the hoops that somebody has to jump through to even see one of our ads, they're naturally more engaged. And as a result, performance is higher. And they say, got it. That sounds great. And then we throw the buzzwords at them. We're like, no fraud, no viewability, no ad blocking. And then, there's like the monster truck guy yelling from behind the scene, like with his voice. And actually maybe we should do an advertisement like that. It would be kind of entertaining. But nevertheless, I think that stuff, sometimes they want to hear those check boxes because they have people to report back to. And we're happy to indulge in that stuff. But mostly we just focus on, it works for pretty obvious reasons. And people tend to like that.
I certainly do. And when you said the hoops, I started realizing, oh my God, I do all of those things to sign up. So it makes a lot of sense. Before we go, Suneet, I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about your experience leading your team. What's the highlight so far been for your time at LiveIntent?
I would say the highlight has been the moment right now where for the first time somebody has called me a leader. So that I think that's extraordinary. Thank you. I accept this word on my team's behalf. The highlight is, look, it is consistently about the people. I will say, look, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a nurse. I'm not not doing anything that directly affects people's lives for the better and makes a difference. The one thing I do is I come to work and I work with an incredibly smart group of people on the marketing side and on the ad sales side. And the highlight of my day is when I don't screw it up, when people seem to have a good time at work, are feeling productive and feeling like they're accomplishing things. And when they can do a look back sort of 90 days and say, holy hell, I've grown, I've taken on a new skill, I've learned something new, I've accomplished something new. That's the highlight of my day, is those moments when that happens and when my team feels like they are making progress. And I would say in some cases, the highlight is when people come to me and say, hey man, I've outgrown you, as just very recently happened. And I need to move on and do something bigger. And I say, it's the greatest feeling in the world. Thanks for being respectful about it and moving on in such an admirable way. So I'd say those are the highlights, I would say. And watching the team dynamic too. If you were to come hang out with the marketing team or the ad sales team or the account management team, and you were to see the energy within those teams, I think you'd really want to come work here. Our most recent investor, Larone from FTV, loved the business, loved the numbers, loved everything. His message to us was, I realized I wanted to invest in you when I walked through your office. And I can tell the difference between a good company on paper and a good company in general. And it's the buzz in the office. And so I'd say hopefully I contribute positively to that buzz.
I think just hearing that, it's very obvious that you do. One of the things you mentioned was helping your team members grow in their roles and achieve goals, sometimes that are even bigger than the position they're in right now. How do you do that?
I think it's actually really easy. It just takes time. The interesting thing about working at a startup is there's always more work to be done than you will ever have the resources to do. So you have an interesting matching issue. So the benefit then is you start with all the things that need to get done on one hand. And on the other hand, you look at all the team and talent that you have and the things that they want to do. And 80% of the time you can match the things that people want to do to the things that don't need that you need to get done. And there's some trade-off, right? There's some things that just have to get done that people will do, but I think you have to do that objective analysis up front. And then there are obviously, once you sort of take a team on and build that way, then you start looking at where you have pain. The guys from 37 Signals wrote a great book called Rework, and one of the most memorable things for me about that book is hire to pain. So wait until you feel pain, and the pain should be associated to something that is absolutely necessary, and if it's not getting done, it holds back the business. And then you hire to resolve that pain and address that issue. I think that's what we've done as a team, but it starts by that matching exercise. And I think it's a fool's experiment to either focus exclusively on what your team wants to do or exclusively on what the company needs done. You just like subscribers opt into newsletters, your employees in this day and age have to opt into their work. And if they don't, they're not going to be happy. And then good work is not going to get done.
And when you're sitting down for that hiring conversation, we all say, we look for passion and commitment. But what does that really look like to you? How do you know that someone is the right fit?
I've been hiring for a long time, so I think part of it is instinct and judgment. You have to walk into that hiring conversation very disciplined as the hiring manager. So you have to look at what do you need, what are the skills you're looking for. So the individual we hired for our email marketing position would be very different than the individual I hired as our customer success designer. You have to make sure the skills you're looking for fit the position, the need, the internal stakeholders and the external stakeholders of the position. If you can do those things and understand the dynamics that are necessary, then and they check all those boxes, then one is the law of large numbers and the wisdom of crowds. So if everybody's walking in and interviewing this person the same way, what are their general feelings? What are their sentiments? I think clear yeses and clear nos are usually pretty obvious. It's the gray areas that get people in trouble. And so ideally you commit to the absolute yes, right? Where across the board, everybody is, yeah, this is an absolute yes hire. And so I think that's one thing. And then passion and commitment, I don't know. I think you can feel it. You get a feel for how people talk. You get it from their references, but sometimes it's just the questions that you ask. I think some of the if we've got time, sort of two practical interview stories, since all the stuff I just said means nothing to anybody who's listening. Two very practical interview stories. There's a young man who came to work for me at Chartbeat as an SDR, and his name is Sam Novakowski, and I'm happy to drop his name. He came in and he did a terrible job on the pre-assignment. There were some spelling errors or some weird things that happened in this document. I was the first person to interview him. I walked into the room and I literally slapped the papers down on the table in front of him, and I said, this assignment isn't that good. There are spelling errors, there are mistakes, and I don't feel good. Why should I even continue talking to you if this is your first foot forward? And Sam put his head down for a second, looked me straight in the eye and said, "You're right. I apologize that I wasted your time with that document. And if you don't want to talk to me from this point forward, I totally understand and respect the decision. It's 100% on me. I can tell you no excuse is worth it, but I learned from it. I appreciate your feedback, and I take it to heart." And I didn't need to interview him. I was done my interview. I hired him instantly, and he was, literally, he panned out to be one of the best interviews and one of the best people in that role. He forged several new roles while there, and has since moved on to do great things. So, how do you get to passion and commitment? You have to find a way to authentically connect with somebody. Usually, it's interestingly enough. To break patterns via surprising and delighting people, because that's where you get to understand how they process. The 90% of things that are normal, people can accommodate. But when the pressure breaks, when things are different, how do you sort of solve that? How do you solve that problem? And I think if you're looking for passion, commitment, and the intangibles, you've got to find a way to break through to an authentic conversation. It's interesting when you look at, there was a great article in the Atlantic, I think just this past week, about ambiguity and uncertainty and how first question, and her response was perfect, and she's one of the best hires we've ever made. So
I love it, and those examples really bring it to life. As you focus, Suneet, on 2016, whether it's building your team, building out the product, marketing to more marketers, what are some of your big goals? What can we expect?
Sure, I think we have to get better at prioritization. I don't view us. I think we have a great team. We have a team that supports the entire customer experience. Just talked to the team about this yesterday. I don't expect us to invest too much in new marketing resources, whether that be people or tools. I do expect us to invest in getting smarter about our work and our productivity. So I'd say 2016 is scale and productivity with the existing team. And if there are areas that we sort of feel pain, we may do it. But the emphasis is on prioritization, productivity, and making the largest possible impact. That's what I would say is our focus for 2016. Interestingly enough, we just talked to the team about it yesterday. So.
Perfect. So before we go, we always like to focus on just 3 questions that don't have anything to do with work or business. Okay. So the first one is, if you were a song, what song would you be?
I would be Cannonball Adderley's Autumn Leaves. Have you ever heard that song?
I haven't heard it.
It's extraordinary. I would say listen to it. I feel like that's the soundtrack of my life. Beautiful song. Jazz. Yep.
I will listen to it right after this. Second question, what's the best advice you've ever received?
It always depends on context. I would say I've been the beneficiary of truckloads of good advice. I think one of the most influential was I had the good fortune of spending some time with the CEO of Prudential when I first joined. Got put on a neat project, and I remember his words were, "Steve, make your mistakes now." Because at some point you're going to be expected to know better. And right now that's not the case. So change, make mistakes, learn, because at some point when a mistake happens, it's going to be your fault and you're going to be accountable for it. So that was a game changer. And it's something I talk to sort of the more junior people that I work with all the time is, make your mistakes. Like, it's my job to take the heat for it right now. That's going to change soon. And when that changes, it changes your decision making. So make as many freaking mistakes as you can make and expand your scope of knowledge. So I think that works out well. That's probably the earliest and the strongest and something that stayed with me for a long time.
I don't think you could have chosen a better day to share that with me. If my dad was listening, he'd be fist pumping in the background, excited that you said that.
Good. Play that one for him. It's true, Jenna. It's so true.
Last one, and I know this one is definitely going to be the best question of our conversation today. You two are a very proud dad. What is one of your favorite memories with your daughter?
Wow. Too many. I would say the greatest memory. I mean, it's literally every morning. Like, this morning could have been the greatest memory, right? It just gets better. But I took a couple weeks off when my daughter was born, had to go back to work. And then I remember the one morning I was going to work and she actually reached out for me from my wife's hands. That was amazing. Yep. That was it.
I think that's the perfect way.
As my voice, one of my 33 voices quivers as I say that. But yeah, that was it.
I think that was, so I got goosebumps too. I was just going to say that. I think that's
we've got the best photo of it too. It was perfect.
You got a picture too?
We got a picture of her like reaching out. Yeah, it's amazing.
That's fast acting. Only a parent could juggle all of that at one time.
Yep. We're always ready with the camera for a photo, so it helps.
I can't thank you enough, Suneet, for spending time with me today and sharing so much valuable advice. Everything you were saying, I was like, I need to write this down. I need to write this down. How can everyone stay up to date with you personally? I know you publish some great stuff, and also with LiveIntent for individuals and companies who want to start working with you.
Sure. I would say, follow us. I think signing up for our newsletters is obviously a great thing. We don't try to be too salesy in them. We just try to educate. So if you're looking to stay up to date on the industry, I think that's it. When the time is right, just reach out and let us know. I think our social channels are a fantastic way to sort of stay on top of us. So on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and then in terms of me personally, Twitter is probably best. But I think of all the options you have to stay in touch with anything, I'm probably the least important. So I'd say those are your best options.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. It was great talking to you.